Good evening, everyone. This is Deerslayer here, and I'm going to be giving you a short tutorial on how to set up a project for creating a basic mod for Risk of Rain 2. There are a few things that I'm going to go over in this video. It's going to be a little bit longer. I'm going to try to do my best to go into depth on some of these things, but I want to preface this video by saying that I am in no way an expert. I myself am still learning how to write mods. I'm learning as I go along, and I'm just hoping to pass the knowledge that I've learned to this point on to you guys to make access to modding more available and easier to come by. So, one of the first things I'm going to talk about is the Risk of Thunder Wiki, which you can see I have a tab for here, and I will also have a link to in the description. Now, I will admit that a lot of information on this wiki it's still a little out of date. It hasn't been updated largely for the anniversary update that happened in March, and it's certainly not updated for the patch that happened a couple days ago. That being said, it's still a very good tool to use because it does give you some basis, like these little areas here will give you some basic idea of what you're doing and how to set up some stuff. It's really good reference material, particularly down here where you have references that tell you some things that you can look at. Particularly the resource paths, these are the item and equipment IDs, scene names, and the style reference sheet are going to be incredibly useful for while you're setting up your mods and trying to get things to display correctly. Alright, now that we have that out of the way, we're going to move on to talking about some of the things that you're going to need for this. So one thing you're going to need is Visual Studio. You're going to need Visual Studio Community right here, and you're going to need to have that set up for .NET. You're also going to need the .NET SDK to go along with that, because we're going to be using .NET programming here, and you're going to need, I believe it is this .NET Core 2.0 here. Yeah. So you're going to need the SDK for 2019, and it's going to have to be whichever version you have. If your operating system runs on 64-bit, you need the by64. If you run on a 32-bit, you need the by86 SDK. Again, you're going to want a Visual Studio 2019. Make sure that you have .NET fully installed and Visual Studio fully installed. I already have these, so I'm not going to download them again, but I want to make sure you guys can see where you need to get your references. Alright, next thing we're going to go over, Unity. Now, I don't have a link to this on a browser because it's a very old version of Unity, but I do have a download link directly to it. The version that you're going to need is the 2018.4.16 version, and it can be found on the Unity webpage under the archive downloads. Again, I already have this set up. You can see it right here, so I'm not going to download it again, but this link will take you directly to downloading the .exe that you need in order to set it up. Alright, one other thing that we're going to be using for the purpose of these videos is this mod template that I'm working on. Now, we're actually going to be using the beta branch because this is the branch I'm actively developing, and this is what's going to have most of what we need on it. Now, this I can actually give you a very in-depth explanation of because, I am the one writing this template. As you can see, I've had updates as little as 2 days ago, and currently I only have support for achievements and items, but as time goes on, I'm going to continue working on adding newer things to it, and hopefully we'll have this as generic as possible for making a basic mod. Now, this isn't going to cover everything. This is mostly just going to cover things that are the most common, items, survivors, skills, those kinds of things. I'm not looking to cover the more abstract aspects of the game, such as interactables or those sorts of things. I still haven't decided if I'm going to make support for monsters or anything like that. Now, what you can do, really all that you need is to look in this basic templates folder that's ready to download, and then you want to download this here, the RRR2 generic mod template.zip. So you download it, and what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to save this into your documents, and then Visual Studio 2019 templates, project templates. You just gotta save it in here. That's all you gotta do. All right. So now if we take this away and we go into Visual Studio 2019, we're going to go to create a new project. And then somewhere in this list here, we should see the template that we just added. All right, for me, it's right down here at the bottom. All right, we're going to give it a name. Say where you want things to save, and click create. All right, and once it loads up, you're going to have all these folders over here, and the only one that you're really going to need to worry about are the main.cs, because this is where your basic functionality of the mod comes in. Now I'm going to say this template, as of right now, relies very heavily on R2 API, as you can see right here. So these are some of the basic things that you're going to need. I have this set up to where all you do, as you just saw, is you download the template, you set it up, and it makes all of this stuff for you. It has these using statements up here, and I think it has a little bit more than what it needs on here. And it also has comments that are going to go through and explain each and every step from this original here, or from this main method. So first we have the BEP dependency. What this does is, for the purpose of this, it's going to add a dependency, a hard dependency, in the mod's code to R2 API. And it's going to call the ID of R2 API and the version. And that's going to be based off of your references that you have over here. As you can see, there are quite a lot of them. They're already added into the project, so if you don't know how to add project references, you have to go up here to project, and you add a project reference, and you have to click browse, find it, all that. All of these are stored in the project itself, so you do not need to delete these. That's why the folder says do not delete. If you delete any of these, something can screw up. And if you delete the entire folder, something will screw up. All right, another thing that you can notice over here, we have the custom classes folder. As I said earlier, I only have support for items and achievements, also called unlockables. So this is purely a customization, like an organization thing. You can delete this folder if you want and just have all of your classes loose. You do not need this folder. Everything else, leave alone. Keep it in here. All right, we have some base classes. These are, our basics for what our items are going to depend on. We have a couple of examples here to look at, but before I get into much of that, I'm going to go back into this. Network compatibility just says everybody has to have the mod, everybody has to have the same version. Now, this is not truly necessary, but it will save everybody a lot of time if you and your friends just use all the same mods. I know it's frustrating to get them all together, but if you use a mod manager, it's incredibly easy, and I'll be going over that shortly. All right, now what we have here is defining the plugin And you can see we have three variables here, the mod GUID, mod name, and mod version. And you can see them down here, we're going to get into that in a second. This is the big thing here, the R2 API Sub Module Dependency. And you see it has name of all of these. So these are the different APIs provided by R2 API that we're going to be using to make our lives much easier. They're going to save us a lot of time trying to add our content into the game because it will handle it for us. All we have to do is make sure to define these. And as I continue to develop onto the project, this list will get longer and longer. Now we move on to our main class. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with C#, this right here means that our main class inherits base Unity plugin. This is required in order to make your mod load into the game. All right, this string here is going to give the name of our mod for Beppin, and that is going to follow this format where you start with com, username, or whatever you want your name to be on here, and then the mod name. It does not have to follow this format, but it's kind of a standard thing. Now, this is the mod name. This is more or less just for you and whoever's reading a log to understand where things are coming from, if there's any errors, or to make sure things are loaded correctly. Then you have your mod version. This is very important because this will tell Beppin in the console what version of the game or what version of the mod you are running, or the user is running, which will help with debugging and making sure that things are, that things are on the proper version. So it's a good idea in order to update that every time that you push a new update to your code. All right, asset bundles, or an asset bundle is created and loaded here. You're going to need that in order to add anything to the game that was created in Unity, and we'll go over that later. All right, then we have our wake method. This is what gets called when the game starts and our mod is loaded. As you can see here, the first thing we have is this using with a var stream, and it's the assembly. This is loading our assembly, which is named right here, and it's this file right here. It's going to name or load it to stream. And then we have an if that makes sure that stream is not null. And what this is right here, if one exists. So if you have an asset bundle, which you should if you use this template, it will load it into data, or load it into the game using assets, which we defined up here. This is important because we will call this throughout other classes in order to access our pre-made models, objects, anything like that. Then we run a method that runs our configs, which we have right here. We have an instantiate method, which I'll go over later on, and we have hooks. All right, we're going to start with hooks because they're the biggest thing here. Hooks are how you access everything into the game. It's how you trigger effects happening with different things. Like say you wanted to have something happen whenever the player's inventory changed, you do on.risk_rain2 So that's how you would do that there. And then you have plus equals. I think I forgot a parameter here. Oh, wait, yeah. All right, and we'll just say just that. And then this will allow us to, make a method off of that. But we're not gonna use that here. All right, then we'll move to our configs. Configs allow you to, as the name implies, give configuration options to your mod. turning something on, turning something off, changing values, manipulating some of the stuff. There's a lot that can be done in configs, and it's the way that your user will interact with your mod directly to change some of your stuff. All right, then we have the Instantiate method, and this is going to be one that's going to make sure that our items, our achievements, anything like that, actually get loaded into the game. As it is right now, you do have to do them one by one, but I'm hoping that I can make something that's going to make that a little bit easier. All right, so what we're going to have here is you can see it calls verify items and verify achievements. So verify items takes in an item base, which if you look in our base classes, that's our item class. And same down here, achievement base for our achievements. And then it's going to generate a config file using config.bind, and it's a boolean, which is going to say to enable the item. So, you can turn it on or off, and whether based on that, it's going to say the item is allowed in the game, the item is not allowed in the game. And if it is allowed, then it calls the init function, which will initialize the item and add it to our content pack from R2 API. And the same thing happens with achievements, exact same way, we just replace item with achievement. Okay. Now that we have that, let's save that, even though it didn't change anything. We'll go over our item bases and then our achievement base. We'll start with item base. Okay, I see what's going on there. All right, so item base. You can see we have a lot of different things here and comments that are going to explain everything. We'll get more into this whenever we actually get into creating items, but I just want to give a brief overlook so you can see what goes into this. So our item base, you usually will not need this. You'll probably never open this file. You shouldn't need to, but I'm going to show you that it's here. This is what happens in the back end, just in case you want to look at this. All right, achievement base. I was a little confused whenever I first saw these. I hadn't opened this up like this before. But if we go ahead and open all these, again, it's a lot of what you aren't going to be needing. Almost all of this is from R2 API that it inherited, which you can see up here where it inherits from base achievement, which is from the actual base game, and I modded unlockable data provider, which is from R2 API. Makes our job a lot easier. So again, you're probably not going to need a whole lot in this itself, but you can see all the comments that actually explain how to use each thing. And if we look at our example classes here, you can see they don't have the comments, but everything is pulled from our bases because they inherit from our bases, as you can see in the top here. All right, that covers our basis for what we're going to be doing in Visual Studio. So now we'll load up Unity. All right, you can see where I had made a test template before. So we're going to go in and make a new project. And we're going to say tutorial project. All right, and then we're going to go create project. Okay, so once Unity loads up, you'll see we have a sample scene loaded over here where it has a camera and a directional light. We're going to go ahead and delete these. We don't need them. Same with the scenes folder. We won't really need that for most applications here. All right, so what we can do is we can go over to a window. We'll go to Package Manager. I'm going to give it a second to load, and then we're going to install this Asset Bundle Browser. I'm going to go ahead and install it to this version, or to this project. All right, and then we're going to go over to Assets, and we're going to import a custom package. Now, if you look over in your tutorial project folder, you'll see that you have a generic mod template package.unity package. This is packaged with the Visual Studio project, It's part of the template, and it's meant to make this easier. So if you go ahead and click open on here, and you just click import, you'll see now you have a few folders here, which have a lot of folders inside of them. This is going to basically just have some organizational value. None of these folders are really necessary. They just help you to organize what goes where, when. So if you go into models, you can see the folder says place raw models here, and you can go into prefabs, items, equipments, whatever. I try to set it up with everything that I thought was needed, but I'm not entirely sure because all I've ever done was do items using this. But if more is needed later, I will add that. So as of right now, we're finished with Unity. And I'm going to go ahead and preface now, before I get into doing anything with Unity, I know very little about it. I'm very much learning as I go. And part of this tutorial series is for me to learn better and to help others learn as I am. So now that Unity is done, we're going to go ahead and close out of it, and we'll go ahead and save everything. It's just going to make sure that our things stay in. All right. Next, we're going to cover some helper mods. So if you use Risk of Rain mods, I highly recommend using a mod manager. You can use R2 Modman, which I have here, or you can use Thunderstorm Mod Manager, which is, for the time being, the same as this. It's just operating through Overwolf. However, I'm still using R2 Modman. I've never updated it. And if you look under my settings, I'm under a dev helper profile. And this is just some recommended mods that will make your job in development a lot easier because you can tell a lot of things happening in the back end. I'm not sure if Risk of Rain Cheats has been updated from the patch the other day, but R2 API, HookGen Patcher, and BepInExPack are basic needs for mods anyways, so they should be included in here. HookGen Patcher will just make sure that you have an up-to-date mhook, which you need for making your mods properly to be able to hook onto events in the game. Debug Toolkit and Risk of Rain Cheats are more or less just your helper mods that are really what this profile is for. They're going to allow you to investigate what's going on in the scene in order to make sure things are spawning correctly, things are popping up the way that they need to be. Risk of Rain Cheats will allow you to spawn in items, instantly teleport through stages, etc., etc. Basically just going to really help you with basic levels of testing and debugging. Alright, the last thing that I'm going to cover today is going to be the Risk of Rain 2 modded Discord. So if I go over here, so this is just the intro channel. As you can see, there are a lot of different channels here. You have rules and links, development for if you need help, tech support if you have trouble with some mods. Then we have some general stuff as well as some voice channels just in case you guys want to join in, talk to some others, play a few games and whatnot. This is the central area that you want to go for, joining in and staying up to date with mods. As you can see, it's very popular joining in. You get active updates on whenever mods are releasing, so you know right whenever mods are coming out and when they're being updated. I will leave a link to joining this in the description of the video as well, in case you aren't already there. Alright, so I believe that covers everything in this video. Later on, I will be making different videos in order to go step by step into creating items, achievements, equipment, everything that I plan to cover in the template. It's going to be some short going, and like I said earlier, I'm still learning just as you guys are. I'm just hoping to be able to help some people out and make the learning process a little bit easier, because currently I don't believe there are any video tutorials on how to make mods so much as there are just installing mods. And most of those are already out of date, so well, I suppose that's it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys back soon.